Today, folks, Beautiful Day shines as a Providence, Rhode Island-based social enterprise with a unique mission to provide comprehensive paid job training to refugees who are involved in every step of making their award-winning gourmet granola. They run 4 paid training programs: job training for adults, internship program for youth ages 15 to 18 with community partners, entrepreneurship training for Afghan women interested in starting food businesses, management training for refugees interested in learning customer service and sales by managing one of our farmers markets. The job training programs further their mission of connecting refugees to their communities through business, job training, and education. Refugees come from all around the world: Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Burundi, Somalia, Eritrea, and Iraq. Even though they speak different languages, their granola chef, originally from Iraq, helps their refugees go beyond language barriers by fostering teamwork and building confidence while making the best tasting granola you have ever tried and learning English. The program's 350 hours, approximately 3.5 months. They also help them pursue further education, get a job placement, start their own business. The granola is made with premium organic oats, grains and seeds, and dried fruit, spices, no preservatives. Binding it together is local honey. What sets this granola apart is it's designed for snacking. And believe me, I've hit this stuff hard in the office. You guys got to take this home because I'm going to eat too much. It comes like you pull it out and like there are big chunks of it. So you eat it like a granola bar. They have granola bars as well, too. It's delicious. They have 4 flavors, standards anyways: Keith's Original, Pistachio, Cardamom, Mochaccino, Hazelnut, and Ginger Zinger. They also have specialty granolas of the month. This month is Cherry Chocolate. They have muesli flavors available. It's all high in protein. They got fiber bars in 6 flavors: Keith's Original, Banana Foster, Mochaccino, Hazelnut, Pistachio, Cardamom, Salted Mango, Bourbon Pecan. Order, go to beautifuldayri.org. That's beautifuldayri, R-I for Rhode Island.org. It is amazing. And grab me a bag right over there on the thing. You can see it right on the package. There's barely anything left in this thing. I literally opened this today. It is proudly made for you by refugees. Can't read the proudly part because I opened it up and I've been eating a ton of this. Now you have to get this away from me. Let's start the show. So delicious. We'll put a link in the bio. Our descriptions. Go.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Monday, February 24th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Eric Blanc, Assistant Professor of Labor Studies and Employment Relations at Rutgers University, organizer trainer in the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, author of We Are the Union, How Worker-to-Worker Organizing is Revitalizing Labor and Winning Big. Meanwhile, federal workers are in disarray as Elon Musk demands emails justifying their jobs. House Speaker Mike Johnson aiming to vote on one big, beautiful bill tomorrow. Expect a total crap show and massive cuts to Medicaid. Meanwhile, 18 days until a government shutdown. And those are not business days, ladies and gentlemen. Trump administration fires 2,000 U.S. aid employees after a Trump-appointed judge lifts his stay. A Biden judge extends the block on Trump's assault on NIH medical research, although it appears those in charge of the NIH are ignoring it. Meanwhile, firings at the FDA, gutting food safety and medical device safety teams. Measles outbreak in Texas grows amongst unvaccinated as the Lesser Kennedy begins a reevaluation of the schedule for childhood vaccines. Trump fires Joint Chiefs Chairman plus 5 others and the top military lawyers for Army, Navy, and Air Force. For now, the Supreme Court of the United States rejects Trump's bid to fire top government whistleblower protector. Far-right surges in German elections as Germany's new leader says, we might as well stop thinking about the U.S. And lastly, you knew it had to come. Dan Bongino named to number 2 at the FBI. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emma Vigeland out today. Well-deserved rest. Something changed in the tone of my audio coming to my headset. Somewhere on that. I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's just something happened inside of my head. I'm back with a moderately successful vacation. I don't really... Oh, I'm not going to whine about that right now.
Still
Whatever.
Tell us the Disney World story.
I wasn't here. I know. Disney stories. It was a staycation. And I got a room painted.
There you go.
Meanwhile, folks, I've been also very busy, forcing everyone to work on the show this weekend. It just occurred to me at one point, I think it was maybe Friday, technically Saturday morning at about 2:30. I had taken way too many Seder gummies and had been drinking. And so I required everyone on the show to send me emails by 5 p.m. today to justify their jobs. What have you been doing? What have you been doing? I wasn't here the past week. I'd like to know exactly what it is you did. And coincidentally, that's also what happened with our federal government. I mean, honestly, if I had just told you that I did that, I would hope everybody in this audience would react with, man, what a total dick.
I think, as opposed to, oh, wow, they're getting efficient over there. I'm ready to start subscribing now.
Yeah, exactly. Now I realize that my subscription dollars will be stretched even further. Here is Donald Trump on Saturday tweeting out. Now, look, I don't want to get too deep into the psychology of Donald Trump's relationship with Elon Musk. All you need to know, and this should have been obvious from the beginning, when Musk says anybody in the House or the Senate who goes against what Donald Trump wants is going to get a well-funded primary challenge. Once you realize that Elon Musk was willing to open his coffers to benefit Donald Trump, there is no amount of personality issues that are going to drive these two apart. They have completely aligned incentive structure. And so Donald Trump going out there, he still probably has a little bit of psychological issues associated with this, but this is the way he deals with it. Elon's doing a great job, but I want to make it clear I'm boss, so I would like to see him get more aggressive. Remember, we have a country to save, but ultimately to make greater than ever before, MAGA. Bamaga, I guess. Boot MAGA is what the new term is, boot MAGA. but MAGA, I guess.
5 a.m.
And then, by, within a couple hours later, Elon Musk comes up with the plan. Here he is, consistent with President Trump's instructions. All federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they've got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Now, putting aside the sort of the legal issues associated with that, I would imagine a lot of people last week were just dealing with the complete uncertainty of whether they have a budget, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, et cetera, et cetera. So, and some agencies are balking at it. Some agencies are, leaders are saying, yes, all hail President Trump and his Vice Chancellor Musk. Now, people have to send an email, and I just want to do this as a public service, okay? People have to send the email to hr@opm.gov. And can we go back to Musk's original tweet for a second? All federal employees. Look, you folks aren't all federal employees, but you can set an example for what federal employees should do. Freedom's not free. If we want our federal government to work efficiently, we all have to account.
Yeah, be the change you want to see in the federal government.
100%. And if you want to show MAGA, if you want to make America great again, you got to do something like this too. So we've Bradley's given you the email address. It is, I wish we could get that a little bit bigger. hr@opm.gov. Now, here's an example of something that I've written up, but how did I write this up? Sam, how did you manage to figure this out? Like, do you have training in this type of thing? And I don't. I'm not going to pretend like I do, but what I do have is ChatGPT. And so I asked ChatGPT, I asked it if I wanted to write an email to the OPM based upon this Musk thing, they said there's a couple of things that you could do. And I may have added, if it was going to be as annoying as possible. One, make it extremely long-winded, use excessive detail, irrelevant anecdotes, and over-explanation, include unnecessary jargon, use technical terms, bureaucratic language, and acronyms that they may not recognize, ask redundant and confusing questions, use formatting cases, mix fonts, bold colors, and italics inconsistently. We get a lot of that actually to the show. You can do this with ChatGPT. They will actually write one. You can say, Elon Musk has asked federal workers to justify what they did this week. If I wanted to write an annoying version of that email, what would it look like? And they'll write it up for you. I had written my own freehand, not as good maybe as the ChatGPT, but so this is what I did. I just put them like days, and then I ran out of interest after like Monday. But Monday, rid office of all DEI coffee and pastry, which means only American coffee in the office, and ripped a croissant out of a coworker's hand. Tuesday, kept my ears open, looking for people using DEI language, and formulated a list of people in office who use the letters DEI, more often than others, or in a suspicious manner, or suspiciously often. For example, we have a plastic container with pencil pretzels. I think everybody knows what those, like the really narrow pencil pretzels. Not sure that's authorized. because you don't know if it's authorized these days. Often, people don't screw on the lid tightly enough. Then people grab for it, the lid flies off, and pretzels will spray everywhere. So a certain coworker, I have obviously deleted the name of the coworker here in this email for this audience, but you can name a coworker, or you can come up with or you can just call him coworker, has a strange reaction where one would normally say this darn thing keeps flipping open. This person wrote, or I should said, but this darned thing. Why use two D's? Then follow it up with every I'm. The coworker seemed to drop the T. So in other words, but this darned thing, every I'm. This coworker is not British, yet they dropped the T. Darned. D. Highlight that. Every. E. I'm. DEI. Anyways, I will continue to observe this person. Wednesday, tweeted outlandish conspiracy theories. Let's see what else. Made a spreadsheet of all actions taken Tuesday described above. Thursday, changed all screensavers in the office to the word MAGA. And Friday, took a personal day. Now, you can write your own email, but the point is, if you want to show solidarity with federal workers or show solidarity with Doge, it works both ways. You should do this. HR@opm.gov, what I did last week. And you should start it by saying, in support of what Doge is doing, I stand with Doge and want you to know what I did last week.
And I would like a promotion for supporting the Doge mission over.
Well, you don't want a promotion because they're firing. People understand this.
Promotion isn't like I don't get fired.
No. Yeah, all the probationary workers in the federal government are being fired. That includes people who have worked there for years, but just recently got a promotion. So if you're in a new job, you're going to get fired. And of course, all the new initiatives, that's why at the FDA, a lot of the medical device stuff, safety is gone now because they hired a bunch of AI experts to dig into what medical devices are doing. And they all got fired. They were obviously the most recently hired because it's a new thing. So innovation will actually cost you your job in the federal government now. You see how effed up this is? We've got a lot of other footage we'll play during the fun half of the program of people who are finding out how screwed they are. Whether they worked for the federal government, thought Donald Trump was a businessman going to come in and create efficiency, or whether they, I don't know, own a family farm. 1/20th, more than 1/20th of the U.S. aid budget annually paid U.S. farmers. Bought food off them. Never mind all the sort of USDA cuts and whatnot. If you think this is about efficiency, you are not paying the slightest bit of attention. This is about destruction of the administrative state. When Elon Musk takes a chainsaw and goes to CPAC, he's not talking efficiency. He's talking about the destruction of the administrative state.
I like the Republicans that when they get one of their toes stepped on with this saying, oh, I actually think it might be better to go in with a scalpel.
Yeah.
Like there's no scalpel here.
There's no scalpel. Of course not. All right. Couple of words from our sponsor, and then we'll be talking to Eric Blanc. according to the CDC, to the extent that it still exists, fewer men than women meet the minimum daily intake for fruits and vegetables. Men are more likely to overvalue exercise and undervalue nutrition. Enter Ritual. It's a multivitamin scientifically developed for men to help fill nutrient gaps in their diets. I like to break the mold by not being really that conscious of both of either getting exercise or nutrition. I don't. That's my thing. But for a couple of years now, people know that my vitamin D levels have finally gotten to a healthy level after my doctor told me, what do you do? Do you sit inside all day? Do you ever see sun? No. You got to take vitamin D. I've tried. But Ritual makes it much, much easier. Ritual comes with 10 key nutrients and 2 delayed release capsules per day designed to dissolve later in the small intestine, an optimal place to absorb nutrients. And I will also say the best part about, well, not the best part, well, one of them, the whole thing for me is to actually make a habit of it. If you have to wait till you have food to eat your vitamin, you will forget. That's what happens to me. So I see my vitamin on the counter, I take it in that moment because Ritual is gentle on an empty stomach. It's rigorously tested and validated by third party for allergens, microbes, and heavy metals. Ritual multivitamins, vegan, non-GMO, project verified, gluten and major allergen free, made traceable. So you know where the ingredients come from. Ritual uses scientific tools to select lower carbon packaging, prioritize sustainably sourced ingredients, and set ambitious climate goals. Ritual is a female-funded B Corp, meaning they're holding themselves accountable to not just their company's financial health, but to the health of people and our planet. Also, the other great thing about it is I have it on a subscription service. So I don't have, my doctor says I need to take vitamins. I go buy vitamins, and then I finish that bottle, and then I don't get another one until the next year when I go for my checkup. Essential for Men is a quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/majority. That's ritual.com/majority for 25% off your first month. Put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, this episode brought to you by Zippix nicotine-infused toothpicks. Zippix brings you a totally satisfying, convenient, and great-tasting way to curb your nicotine cravings. Now you can get your nicotine fix anytime without having to rely on smoking or vaping. Zippix toothpicks give you an easier and better and more discreet way to get your fix. Folks, smoking is very much so 1993. Honestly, it's not in your future. Now's the time to start weaning yourself off. They're available in 6 great long-lasting flavors. They have 2 options, 2 milligram and 3 milligram in nicotine, so you can, taper it down. Zippix toothpicks are perfect for flights, sporting events, restaurants, literally anywhere, everywhere that smoking and vaping are banned. They're one of the most cost-effective nicotine products on the market. They're proudly made in the U.S. If you're not a nicotine user, or if you're trying to get away from your nicotine habit, you can step it all the way down. You can do what I do. Caffeine and B12 Zippix infused toothpicks gives you a little quick energy boost. And the toothpicks, that was a big part of how I got off smoking. Because you get an oral fixation. Zippix have already helped hundreds of thousands of customers get their nicotine fix without having to inhale smoke or vape oils. So what are you waiting for? Give your lungs a break and try Zippix nicotine-infused toothpicks. Ditch the cigarettes, ditch the vapes, get some nicotine-infused toothpicks at zippixtoothpicks.com. Today, get 10% off your first order by using the code MajorityReport at checkout. Your lungs and your family and you will be glad you did. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine, of course, is an addictive chemical. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix nicotine toothpicks. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. All right, quick break. When we come back, Eric Blanc, assistant professor of labor studies, employment relations at Rutgers, organizer trainer in the EWOC, or Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, and author of We Are the Union, How Worker-to-Worker Organizing is Revitalizing Labor and Winning Big. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining us now, or returning to the program, I should say, Eric Blanc, assistant professor at labor studies and employment relations at Rutgers University, organizer, trainer in the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, author of We Are the Union, How Worker-to-Worker Organizing is Revitalizing Labor and Winning Big. Eric, welcome back to the program. I think the last time you were here was probably several years ago. I can't remember exactly when the last time, but so much of what you've written here is reminds me of your book on the Red State Revolution, Rebellion, I should say, which was about teachers going on strike in states where there was no teachers unions, and people just deciding like we're going to go on strike without the structure that one generally assumes needs to exist. How is this like an extension of that?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people were worried, rightly so, about what would happen to the labor movement under Trump for obvious reasons, and we're seeing the intense attacks. But as you mentioned, there's precedent for workers organizing from below to defeat Republicans on a wide scale basis, even in really unfavorable political terrain. So we're seeing that now with the nascent federal workers movement. I'm sure we can talk more about that. But yeah, as you mentioned, I would really trace the beginning of this bottom up, what I call worker to worker organizing, grassroots upsurge to 2018, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona, these statewide strikes that went viral over Facebook groups in which they did end up getting some support from the unions, but in which it was really the workers from below that took the lead. And that showed that you can win. You can win even when the Republicans are in power. If you create enough of a political crisis for those in power, you can force them to retreat. And I think we're starting to see that now again with the federal workers who are organizing in a very similar way on a national level, relying on each other, using digital tools to build power at work and then to get support around the community to fight back and win. So yeah, it's exciting times, but you're right. I think it does go back to that moment.
What, And you're looking at, I mean, this sort of most recent era. And I want to talk about those examples that you use, specifically Starbucks and UAW and News Guild. But give me a sense of, like, just so that we can sort of address this and then maybe get past it. The difference between Trump's first 4-year term, and frankly, Obama's term prior to that too, I would argue, and Biden's term, and where we are today, just a month into Trump, in terms of the governmental support for unions, because I don't think people understand how the government has been really since Taft-Hartley, 1947, sort of putting their thumb on the scale for management on some level, like inhibiting what unions can do. And within that construct, the Biden administration was pretty good relative to what we've had over the past 40, 50 years.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. I mean, I have a huge amount of criticisms on Biden domestically and particularly internationally, but the one bright spot, or one of the very few bright spots, was the NLRB, which governs labor law. And Biden appointed person Jennifer Abruzzo, who's like a fighter for the working class. And really, that NLRB under Jennifer Abruzzo for 4 years did everything within its power to help boost this bottom-up worker sort of upsurge. And it helped. The reality is the power and capacity of the NLRB is limited. The labor law reform is still needed, and the power of the NLRB to like actually force companies to the table is still limited. But the NLRB did weigh in helping Starbucks get off and moving, and helping Amazon workers get their union win. And so it's a different terrain now, obviously under Trump, and it raises the possibility of the government doing more to support workers. It's not inevitable that the government is always going to side with management, and it shows that actually we should be demanding more of the Democrats when they're in power. Like, that actually sets a quite high standard that should always be replicated, that the NLRB should be actively supporting workers organizing, which is frankly what its mission is. That's what it's supposed to. It's not actually supposed to be siding with management. Its mission is to be helping workers act upon their legal right to unionize. It's just that in practice that hasn't been implemented. It was implemented for the last 4 years, and now it's not being implemented again for obvious reasons.
And we should say the way that it's not being implemented is that the National Labor Relations Board is completely dysfunctional now because Trump fired enough of its board members to render it without a quorum, so it cannot operate. Now, the people he's going to put in there anyways are also not going to be helpful towards labor. But he's basically more or less shut the system down. No?
It's a little bit trickier. That's true on a national level, but most of the day-to-day work of the NLRB functions on a regional level. So the basic things that the NLRB does, which is helpful, which is run union elections and allow for that, that's still happening. And it's important for workers to understand that, because otherwise there can be an over sort of reaction and feel like, oh, now there's no space, there's no legal rights. It actually is still possible, and people are still running union elections. Just the other day, union workers won their first election ever at Whole Foods under Amazon. So the local machinery is actually still running and functioning, but on a national level, which makes the decisions around like big high-end cases, then that is for the time being paralyzed.
All right, so let's talk about Starbucks. We've had some of the people you've written about on several times. Jazz Brizek, I think, has been on 2 or 3 times, and Michelle Eisen. They were out of that first sort of Starbucks up in Buffalo. But why Starbucks in walking through this sort of story, in this trying to show people their ability to unionize?
Yeah, so just taking a step back, well, why should we care about Starbucks? Well, we should care about Starbucks because the fundamental issue facing working people and the crisis of our country at this point is that there's far too few workers in unions. So the book is an attempt to address, like, how would you actually organize millions of workers into unions, which is the precondition for stopping Trumpism, ending climate catastrophe, and all of this. And so what Starbucks shows, like some of the other drives that I profile, is a new form of union organizing that has the capacity to scale up to millions. There's a lot of good labor organizing that happens in the US, but the problem is because it's so staff intensive, it just can't reach the number of workers necessary. It's just literally, there's not enough time and money to be able to organize large enough groups of workers. So what Starbucks did is it built a new model in which it relied far more on workers to do the types of things that staff normally do. And so it was able to spread virally. But what happened, as listeners might remember, is they won one union election in Buffalo. Hundreds and then eventually thousands of workers all across the country started flooding the email inbox and saying, well, how did you do that? We want to do it too. If it had been a traditional campaign, they literally would have had to stay with their initial plan, which was just to organize locally. They had no initial plans to organize nationally because they had so few resources. This was all sort of building the plane as they flew it. And so they had to pivot to something really dramatically new. And they actually built this new model in practice before they'd even theorized it. And they started having the workers themselves who had won this union election in Buffalo and start organizing, get on Zoom calls and essentially talk through what they had done with workers all across the country. And it was the only way they could do it, because if they had tried to rely on staff, they just wouldn't have been able to have enough conversations and enough support. So that is the basic reason why we should care about Starbucks as far as a model. But then on the merits of Starbucks itself, well, I think the basic reality is Starbucks is the sixth largest private employer in the United States. You're talking about over 200,000 workers. You're talking about, if workers unionize Starbucks, this will be the single most important union election, union first contract since the 1930s. There hasn't been a major breakthrough. It's sort of the heart of corporate America, really since the 1930s, early 1940s. And so what we're talking about is, if workers can show that not only are they able to win in things like journalism and higher ed, but take on the biggest corporations, defeat them despite the most intense union busting, right? The companies spent hundreds of millions of dollars just to terrorize and destroy workers. And they're very close right now to winning a first contract. So it's this amazing test case for the new model, but then also showing that, labor should be raising its ambitions. If this small group of workers could initiate a national campaign that's able to take down one of the biggest companies in the world, then it shows that all labor unions should really be putting real resources into serious organizing, particularly on a bottom-up level.
All right. So first off, and we should say, when you say staff, you're talking about, like, often what happens with a unionization project like this is that people will go to a union to try and get a sponsorship, essentially. And in this instance, I think most unions would have said, like, it's too difficult. You've got workers, you got 6 workers in Buffalo. And then, then you got 10 people in Syracuse. And then we got, it's just too hard, too disparate in that way. It's almost like the only way it could have worked with people who weren't aware of how difficult this could be.
Yeah, I think that's right. And unions are famously conservative, and not in the political sense, although sometimes the political sense, but just conservative in the sense that these are not risk-taking institutions. And so the idea of taking on one of the biggest companies in the world with so few resources would have just struck most unions as lunacy. And in fact, that is the norm. One of the issues we have in the labor room is unions systematically say no to workers when they reach out. It's almost the norm. The unions are very picky and choosy about what drives they'll take on, because they tend to be quite expensive. Fortunately, these Starbucks
everybody
workers
is like that. To be fair, to be fair. No, like, this is the case with almost every single institution that exists. Honestly, like, it is rare to find any type of institutions that are, like, not risk averse, short of, like, billionaires like the Mercers, who are willing to just chuck out money to any anti-union or any right-wing project there is. But for the most part, people are afraid of expending resources in a way that's not going to work.
Yeah, you're right. This is sort of a classical sociological dilemma, is that the bigger your organization gets, the more you have to lose, so the more risk averse you get. So you're right. It's not just unions, but unions are maybe even worse culprits for a variety of reasons, because they're going up against the biggest and most powerful opponents too. So it's not just a risk in general. It's like them doing this is just poking the bear. So a lot of unions are sort of understandably reluctant to poke the bear. But for that exact reason, historically and still today, the forces that have been willing to take that risk have tended to be young people and young leftist workers, young radicalized workers. For political reasons and for personal reasons, they have less familial responsibilities. So if they get fired, it's not quite the same risk. And then honestly, if you believe that a better world is possible and billionaires should not exist, and maybe you've had experience, maybe you volunteered for the Bernie campaign, maybe you went to a Black Lives Matter protest. This is the milieu that all across the country has been driving this bottom-up upsurge. And for them, the risk factor is a little bit different because they want to change the world, and they understand that there are risks, but that they're willing to take that. And it's been those workers at Starbucks and elsewhere that have really driven things forward.
Last year was a record number of petitions to start new unions, is my understanding, at least in modern times.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. We've had record numbers on that, and we had over 100,000 workers join a union through organizing last year, almost the same number the year before, and just a little bit less. So you're talking in the span of just the year prior. So you're talking about over 300,000 workers unionizing in this bottom-up way, primarily just over the last few years. This isn't a small army. This is not an insignificant number of people who now are building power against some of the biggest companies on earth. It hasn't been enough to turn around the whole country yet, mostly because unions haven't been investing in this as they should. It's sort of workers have had to do it despite the lack of overall support of unions. But you see how even in this unfavorable terrain, because even under Biden, the law was still really stacked against workers. The NLRB was good, but they were still systematically firing workers, ignoring the law because there's so few sort of repercussions for breaking law.
Starbucks seems to be shutting down a lot of stores still where there's union activity, it feels like.
Yeah, they've started this again. The major check on them isn't really the law, but is public backlash. And so insofar as their brand is in serious jeopardy, if not already extremely tainted, then this has put some of a block. The worst of their union busting has been checked for now, which is good. It shows that the company's on the retreat. They're meeting with the workers. They actually have brought in a mediator. So the worst of the union busting at Starbucks for the time being has been put on pause. And it shows that the workers do have power, and they're on the process of winning.
It also shows to me that people don't want to share their blankets like they did in the Warsaw Ghetto. I don't know if you remember that, Howard Schultz. That will always stay with me. Howard Schultz admonishing Starbucks workers to be more like people in the Holocaust. Sort of might have wanted to sort of think out that metaphor a little bit as to who were the people in the Warsaw Ghetto. In his scenario, it was his workers. And ostensibly, he was the Nazi guards, I guess. Anyways.
And it is funny that one of the nice things about unionization is that it sort of brings to light how just actually dumb in many ways these CEOs are. There's just a genuine obliviousness to the sort of realities of working people that when you sort of pull them out of their boardrooms, you're like, oh, this person shouldn't be allowed to talk to the public and talk to working people.
It is fascinating. That was one of the most insightful, his complete inability, his overestimation of his ability to be in touch with these workers was so, I think, illustrative of what was problematic at these things and the dynamic that goes on, right? He really thinks he knows these people, and he has no idea, none. Contrast what happened at Starbucks, which was a completely there was no union, and some people started in Buffalo, and they basically grew one. With what happened with the UAW, because it's still from a bottom up type of situation, but one happens in the context of a pre-existing institution.
Yeah, it's worth noting there was a little bit of union support in the Starbucks case, but you're right that the overall is really grassroots driven. In the case of the UAW, it's true that the union supported, but it's worth just flagging the prehistory, which is that the UAW until very recently was the worst, most corrupt, most top-down union, and workers had to take over their union. So the bottom-up aspect started with workers running a slate to kick out the old leadership, electing somebody named Sean Fain, who listeners probably are aware of now, and taking back their union. That then in turn set the stage for extremely successful strike at the big three, won massive raises. And what the UAW did, which was so smart, which most unions don't do, is they understood the importance of attention and momentum. And so at this moment, when the whole, eyes of all of the auto workers and really all of the country was watching them win and sort of massively defeat these companies, they said, okay, now that we have the spotlight on us, we're going to call on every auto worker across the whole country to start unionizing. Because the basic problem in auto is that you have the North unionized, but most of the new plants are in the South. And nobody's been able to unionize the South for ever. None of the major plants until just last year were unionized. They said, okay, we're going to seize this moment. We call on all workers to start self-organizing. We're going to give you the tools and support you need. And sure enough, within a few months, they had won the first union election ever in the South. They won Chattanooga and Tennessee at Volkswagen, and then they spread to Mercedes. And you see now still all across the country, auto workers are organizing and they're running more elections. And so you can see then there's ways of doing this bottom up organizing that do lean on existing union resources. And I think actually part of the argument I make in the book is you need that. If we're going to organize millions and millions of workers, you need unions putting real resources into bottom up organizing. So we shouldn't see them as mutually exclusive, sort of rank and file versus the union, but rather we need unions to be organizing in a different way, to be giving tools and support for workers to start self-organizing and to be able to organize at scale. And I think the UAW is showing how that can be done.
What is happening since the Mercedes plant? And I'm also thinking in terms of, like, we just had an Amazon warehouse, I think it was in Nashville, that voted not to unionize. So I'm wondering, when I look at like where unionization is happening, it doesn't feel like it's happening as much in industrial settings as much. I mean, in terms of like expansion, or in sort of more like in warehouse. It's more like public facing things, baristas, teachers. People where there is a more of a connection with the public.
Yeah, it's a good question. I dig into the numbers of this a bit in the book. It is also the case that the bottom up organizing has spread to sort of more blue collar work that isn't as public facing. It hasn't gotten the same amount of media attention, but the biggest win, think about Amazon. One of the biggest wins recently was Amazon, and that's at a warehouse that isn't public facing. And actually, we've seen in Amazon just over the last few months, even under Trump, a significant increase in the amount of organizing. There was a national strike during Christmas. And so the organizing at Amazon is actually spreading and is deeper than it's ever been. But you pose a real question, which is, how would you organize the rest of these industries? I would say it's just worth keeping in mind that the political economy we're in is that the vast majority of people work in like service and public facing jobs at this point. So it's not that surprising. This is where the overall majority of people work. And also a lot of hard industry is still union. So there's like in the North, for instance, the big factories tend to be unionized already. It's in the South that where the factories are not as organized. And, the warehouses of Amazon are one of the big targets. But it's not that surprising that most of the organizing has been in retail and in, education and in hospitals, because that's just frankly where most people work. And I think sometimes there's a romanticization of blue collar work, which doesn't exactly fit with the political economy we're in. It's not like all of the workers are there. We need to be organizing all workers, but it's actually, it's a good thing that the vast majority of workers are organizing wherever they're at. I think what you mentioned though is real, that the terrain is harder though for workers without that public support. I think they feel more isolated, and particularly in the South where the political sort of establishment is so against them. These are hard places to organize. There's a reason that they haven't organized to the same numbers as elsewhere. And so it's going to take a lot more resources. And frankly, it's going to take sort of more of a national upsurge for large numbers of workers to join in. It's not the case that you're just going to convince all of them through one-on-one conversations. These things tend to grow in moments and spurts. And, we're seeing that type of spurt right now in the federal sector under Trump. And we don't know when exactly that spurt is going to sort of explode at Amazon. So you have to keep on with that organizing. And then eventually it sort of breaks through like it did at Starbucks or like it did in the federal sector right now.
I want to talk about federal workers and particularly also I want to talk about EWOC, because I think that's it's a great organization. I think it'd be very helpful for folks in our audience who are wondering what's the first step that they take. But is there, to the extent that there is a broad union strategy, and there are people thinking about it on those terms, right? Like I imagine, Sean Fain is thinking about it. I imagine, I don't know if O'Brien is thinking about something like that as much as he is, thinking about like his next plane ride in Air Force One or whatever it is. But I imagine there are people who think about that and assess it. And where are the sectors that people are thinking, or let me step back from that. Are there ideas out there that we need to, this sector, either from an industry perspective or a type of worker perspective or a regional perspective, this is where we need to really focus our efforts, because if we unionize this state or these different states, it's going to catch on. Or if we unionize this industry or these shops, it's going to catch on. Are there people thinking like that, or is it more like we're following where the energy is?
Well, yeah, this is how I would say. First of all, the unfortunate reality we're in is that basically union density in the private sector is 6%. It's 10% in the workforce as a whole. So what this means is the vast majority of industries are non-union at this point, right? So there's so much terrain to grow in almost all industries that there is a necessity essentially for the unions in these different sectors to go big in all of these different sectors. We don't actually have the sort of luxury of just picking and choosing one or two key sectors. And that also does reflect a change in the political economy. Whereas in the 1930s, you could just really focus on hard industry. The nature of the economy is sort of disaggregated and is much more diverse. So it's such that there isn't this one sort of linchpin that if you take down, takes out everything. People suggest that might be Amazon. There's some truth to this. The difficulty is that Amazon is extremely powerful, and you're probably going to actually need a much broader movement and a lot of time before you're able to take down Amazon. So I'm skeptical that you just sort of organize Amazon and then everybody else. My guess is Amazon will be sort of one of the last pins to fall, as it were. And I do think that the necessity is for a very broad-based labor movement to be scaling up everywhere. But within the industries, right, if you're talking about within specific industries, well, then, yeah, there's specific targets you should be focusing on, right? So you should be focusing in healthcare on the biggest non-union sort of HMOs and these different healthcare chains. Within the private sort of retail sector, you need to be organizing Walmart. You can't just be organizing Starbucks and Amazon. Walmart is still the biggest private employer. So you have particular targets within these different industries that have to be sort of a linchpin. And I think part of the issue has been that the labor movement has had its expectations so low and its resources so low for so long that even thinking about doing a big target and a big campaign is sort of outside the wheelhouse or the sort of sense of what's possible for most top union leaders. So again, it's going to come up to these workers from below to take initiative. What about workers? Workers can go salt, which means you just get a job at a non-union place. They did that at Starbucks. They did it at Amazon. They can do that at Walmart. They can do that in these hospitals. And you're starting to see that now. So I think it's going to be more, this is the dynamic where workers from below show proof of concept, win a union election in one of these big companies, like we saw at Whole Foods. They won that despite the labor movement as a whole wasn't investing in Whole Foods. Workers themselves took the initiative. They beat Amazon despite a just horrific union busting campaign that showed it was possible. That in turn is the type of thing you're going to need to force the union leadership, which for the reasons we discussed are really risk averse, to take the big organizing initiatives that right now, frankly, they're not really talking about it. Most of them aren't even talking seriously about like plans to defeat Trump. The level of institutional inertia and lack of strategy in labor would be hard to exaggerate.
Wow. All right, let's talk about EWOC. This is, and we've interviewed these folks, and we're going to have them on again in the next couple of weeks. But EWOC is, what does it stand for again? And then, like, where did it start?
Yeah, so EWOC's the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. Began at the beginning of the pandemic. Some of us were labor organizers essentially for the Bernie campaign. And think about March 2020. All of a sudden, workers are getting thrown into work at the pandemic. There's no PPE. There's no hazard pay. People are freaking out about whether they're going to die because their coworker has COVID and no one has vaccines. But this was the moment in which thousands of workers started reaching out to us for organizing help. And we had to build an organization to help meet this need of workers asking for support organizing. Since then, EWOC has evolved into a nationwide organization with the support of United Electrical Workers Union, Democratic Socialists of America, which essentially at this point mostly focuses on helping workers start self-organizing to build a union. So we say that if it takes 100 steps to build a union, EWOC will walk you through the first 50 steps and then connect you with an established union that can take you on. So it's essentially a project that will support any worker in any industry start building a union. And the mechanism is simple. You just literally go to workerorganizing.org, you fill out a very quick form, and then within 72 hours, a volunteer experienced organizer will call you back and start helping you build power at work.
That's amazing. So this is very easy for people, at least, to start the process. I mean, it's a hard process at the end of the day, but the bar to entry, as they say, is low for something like this. Let's talk about what's going on with federal workers, because we're starting to see across the country, like on local news, like, I was an IRS agent, I got fired, or I can't get cancer treatment because my NIH grant, the people working on that had to stop working, or I'm a vet, I just 30% of the federal workforce, I just got fired. What are the federal unions doing? Are almost all of these people would be unionized? Again, it's tricky.
The reality, unfortunately, is that so many federal workers aren't even members of their unions. And so one piece of good news is that since over the last 5 weeks, essentially since Trump took power, you've had an upsurge in membership in the unions. You had more people join just the largest national union in the federal sector, which is AFSG. Over 15,000 workers have joined in the last 5 weeks, which is more than joined in the whole year prior. Wow. So you see people are flocking into the unions. And there's a saying in the labor movement that sometimes the boss is the best organizer. Well, that's certainly the case right now with Trump and Musk, because they're just going so hard. I mean, they're really just, it's a sledgehammer. It's almost hard to believe how crazy their actions are, such that people who really were trying to keep their heads down, and maybe even up to a week or two ago, thought that somehow they would be able to get through this just by keeping their heads down. And this, we should say, is something that is culturally inculcated into the civil servant mentality. There's a lot of fear about speaking up publicly. It's not part of the norm. But frankly, when Musk is unilaterally shutting down agencies, even though he has no legal right to, when he's unilaterally just declaring that people are going to be fired if they don't respond to his email within 48 hours, this creates a crisis mode. And I think you're right that it's not just a crisis for the workers themselves. The media, unfortunately, at first was just talking about how this is impacting the workers, but really it should be understood to be a crisis for American society as a whole. Like, literally, how do you think you will get your Social Security without a federal workforce? How will you get Medicare? How will you get Medicaid? Who will make sure that there's not just insane toxins in the water you drink and that your kids drink? All of these really basic things that, frankly, people take for granted, they're almost invisible. The workers that we've been talking to and that are I've been helping support, they put it well. They said the reason people don't think about federal workers so much is because we're doing our job. Right. We're invisible because we're doing our job. So you can take these things for granted, but less and less now, right? Just think about how many airline crashes there are. Well, that's because there's been underfunding of just basic infrastructure for the FAA and the airline industry. And so when you start defunding these things, like Musk is dramatically accelerating, then all of a sudden you start seeing, oh, this is what happens when you don't have federal workers and you don't have basic regulations in place.
Yeah, I mean, just before we came on, we were saying, I mean, this would be a great thing for Democratic lawmakers to do, is to sort of like draw the connection between firing these people and vaccination rates dropping, let's say, and maybe measles happening, or firing these people and loss of food safety and worker safety and consumer safety. I mean, on and on. Those are the people to draw those connections. Lastly, let me ask you about other types of organizing. One of the things that I've increasingly, and we're starting to look into more here, is tenant unions. Now, you're a labor guy. What is it about organizing via labor that is I guess unique relative to other organizations? And also, like, what is your sense of tenant organizing? Because that seems to me obviously to be the most obvious other place to organize?
Yeah, I mean, I think tenant organizing is good. It's sorry, I'm not going to speak ill of it. I can say I'll try to make a positive case for why labor is where I put my energy and why I think it's the most centrally important. There's a few reasons. First of all, every public institution and every private company depends on workers. So this is just an inordinate amount of power. There's no equivalent of that in any other sort of sector of society. So the reality is that the federal government depends on its workers. The private sector depends on its workers. So that means that there's just a level of potential disruptive power of labor when you organize workers as workers that you don't have elsewhere. But there's a second thing, which is maybe less obvious, which is that workplaces bring together folks who don't necessarily agree ideologically. Like you're working with people all across the spectrum in most cases. And so the workplace, even more so than an apartment complex or some other institution like a church, is just a force where you have the possibility of speaking with and persuading people who don't already agree with you. And that's why labor organizing, much more so than any other form of organizing, is attuned to how you listen to your coworkers. How do you listen to people who don't already agree with you? And so you're not just speaking to the echo chamber. So you have to listen deeply to people. You have to find the issues that are widely and deeply felt. And then you have to find ways to move people who might not agree on all sorts of ideological questions. Maybe they vote for Trump, maybe they're just totally checked out. Labor organizing, because it's grounded in people's economic sort of immediate necessities, right? Like, how do you pay for rent? How do you get by? It has a commonality that can unite working people all across all of their religious, political, ethnic backgrounds, what have you. There's a basis for uniting working people around their economic interests at work and sort of more broadly as a class that just you don't see in other terrains to the same extent. So because of the power and because of the breadth and the possibility of unity, I think that labor organizing is like the most important thing to be doing, both for sort of challenging economic equality, but then also at this point, frankly, just for defeating Trump. I do think that the most important struggle right now is the federal workers, because if Trump is able to destroy the federal workers unions, that's going to set the basis for him to be able to essentially use the federal government in a completely authoritarian way, right? There will be no checks and balances on him because the courts aren't going to stop him. So he needs to destroy the federal union to be able to then go do his full reactionary agenda on society as a whole. So the last best hope really are these federal unionists who are trying to put a block in stopping him. So I would just say sort of a pitch to listeners who want to get involved, if you're a federal worker or not, you should go to the following website, which is how people can get involved in this campaign, which is go.savepublicservices.com. So it's go.savepublicservices.com. There's going to be a lot of actions over the coming weeks and actually, frankly, coming days that we're going to need public support fully in on, right? Because it can't just be seen as federal workers fighting on their own. It has to be understood that the whole American public understand the stakes of defeating Elon Musk.
We'll put a link to that. You were ahead of me by a half a step there. I was going to ask you how people can help. We're asking people to do their part and show their solidarity by emailing, what was it, the opm.at.gov.com, so that they can also explain what they've been doing this past week to show their support for government efficiency, just efficiency in general, we should have all around. Go.savepublicservices.com give you an opportunity for folks to show their support for public workers and figure out how we can get the message out there. And Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, if you want to figure out how to start organizing your shop, your store, whatever it is, and that's at, what's the website for that is?
Yeah, workerorganizing.org. And so if you go to workerorganizing.org, then literally you will get connected, fill out a form, you'll get connected, and we'll help you start organizing your workplace in whatever industry you're in, whatever part of the country.
All right, we'll put both those links in the podcast and YouTube description today. Eric Blanc, we will also, Eric Blanc, sorry. We will also put a link to We Are the Union, how worker to worker organizing is revitalizing labor and winning big. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to take a break, head into the fun half of the program. Schadenfreude says there's an AI-generated video of Trump sucking Musk's toes playing on the TV in the HUD headquarters. We have seen that already. We will be playing that probably first up in the break. Evan from Portland. I'm a tenant organizer turned labor organizer. Labor organizations have the ability to strike in many places, whereas tent strikes are incredibly difficult. Interesting. I still like the idea of, I mean, obviously, labor has the most leverage, right? I mean, they have the most leverage. They can shut down broad swaths of economic activity. Much harder for tenant organizations to do that. But I still think tenant organizations are a good idea because it's so easy to create these relationships within a, your apartment building. And there's only so much you can do. You can figure out, like, just keep it active. It's almost like use it or lose it type of situation. And people can be activated at different times for different reasons.
Also, it's just good place to learn political skills. Julia Salazar, who's a council member, I believe, here in the DC, DSA member, New York State Senate, actually. Sorry, she started out as a tenant organizer.
Yes, and people are saying we can do both, of course. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. But if you don't have the resources, send us an email. We'll work out a deal with you. But also, the thing you can do to help the show is tell your friends. There's a lot of non-political junkies. Or, there's I think a lot of people who are like, MSNBC is just not doing it for me anymore. I want to have a deeper understanding of what is going on here. And, I'm frustrated with the Democratic Party. I don't want to vote for some rando third party that is going to be gone in 6 months. But I want to get ideas as to what the Democratic Party should be doing, whatever it is. Tell your friends, send an interview to your friends. Send a clip.
Yeah, I heard Joy Reid and Ayman. What's Ayman's last name?
Ayman Moladin.
Moladin, yeah.
Moladin, yeah.
Wait, he's gone?
Yep.
No.
I don't know if I saw him.
I don't think Ayman's
I definitely saw
gone.
Joy Reid. I think.
I thought it was Joy Reid, and who was the other person that was let go?
I thought I just saw that on the feed.
No, I didn't know that Ayman was.
Yep.
Ayman's gone too?
Just a few hours ago, it says that they canceled the show as well.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. And they're making Alex Wagner just a contributor. Because
right. That's what, yeah. Out. Fang, Capehart. Oh, Moladin and Reid. Interesting. I mean, there goes all the voices talking about Palestine.
Yep.
Not that Capehart was doing that. I don't know. I didn't really follow Fang. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I didn't follow any of it.
I haven't tuned in for half a decade.
She was mostly like a legal correspondent to begin with, Katie Fang.
She was?
Yeah.
But she had her own show on the weekends.
Yes, she did, yeah. But they're putting in the freaking Michael Steele, Simone Sanders, Alicia Menendez panel in place of Joy's, in place of the readout. So
what do they call them?
That's exciting.
Her numbers were bad.
Right.
What do they call the Michael Steele show?
It's a 3-person show.
Steel Man.
Yeah.
Steel Man would actually be good.
Make him a debate, bro.
Steel Man, Straw, whatever. I don't care. DSA in Atlanta, not just Joy Reid was talking about Palestine. Moladin was too.
Yep.
Moladin might be on a panel show. Nuclear powered GPT. I think we should have a grassroots organization, left-wing channels that promote renter unionization. We'll call it tenant media. Folks, don't forget justcoffee.coop. But tell your friends. And if you're listening to the podcast, give us a review on iTunes. Yep. Even if you reviewed us like 10 years ago. That's worth doing.
Or spam our videos into the replies of Elon and stuff.
100%. Yeah, you can spread the word about the show, and that is helpful to us as well. Also, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. They support farmers in Chiapas and West Africa. Check it out. East Africa, I think, as well. What was the other thing? Oh, stickers. I want to get the stickers. If you have ideas for a sticker, like I want a sticker like we can put next to like on the like egg labels. Freaking eggs. I was at Key Food. There's like no eggs.
I bought 18 for $15.
Yeah, you got it. They buy it there for whatever reason now. They sell them in bigger trays. I eat a lot of eggs. I mean, even at a buck of egg, I still think it's like the best food.
Yeah, it could be like probably $2 until I start changing my mind.
$2 an egg would be a problem, but a buck an egg, I'm like, $2 for breakfast. Okay. But nevertheless, I would like to see stickers that says something like, "You got trumped on," or something like that. I don't know. We got to come up with those.
Maybe Elon with an egg in his mouth.
Yeah, there's
Musk sucks eggs.
Luigi Snuggles, make them shiny stickers. Okay. Baltimore live show. My brother works for the National Labor Relations Board. He and his coworkers are thinking of responding to the email with a grocery list just to mess with Doji's algorithm. Yeah.
Cut and paste like coverage of lawsuits against Elon's factories for extreme racism. Just send stuff in.
Kowalski from Nebraska. How do you not have an egg guy? It's winter. The eggs get a little bit trickier. In the summer, I got egg guys. I got multiple egg guys. Believe me. ESVN on hiatus.
Yeah, we will definitely be back relatively soon. Emma obviously just needs a little.
I think after that game yesterday between the Celtics and the Knicks, I don't think Emma's going to be back for a long time.
I was just going to say that it's not helping that the Knicks cannot beat the only two teams that they would need to beat to remain competitive in the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there. But yes, we will be back soon.
Lou Diamond, do you remember those Joe Biden stickers on the gas pumps that said I did that? Somebody needs to print those up for the eggs around. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that might have.
Yeah. Emma's out today, taking much needed rest. She's got a lot of extracurricular planning to do. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Left Reckoning, this weekend for patreon.com/Left Reckoning members. Go subscribe. We had Jody Dean on talking about her neo-feudalism thesis. David and I have a little bit of an allergy to describing capitalism as things besides capitalism, but I think it's an interesting sort of framing, and it does kind of feel like we're moving into a feudal era. So yeah, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to listen to that.
All right, see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back, folks. We're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we discussed earlier that you have the ability to show your solidarity with federal workers and with just the whole idea of being efficient by emailing, what's the address again? OPM?
HR@opm.gov.
HR@opm.gov. HR@opm.gov. And showing that you want to get with the program too and tell them what you've been doing at work for the past 5 days to justify your job. I would recommend being as detailed as possible because you never know what part of your day is the one that's really going to speak to your bosses as to showing how much you deserve your job. Like, I know when I come in and I see like, oh, Emma's moved back the tissue box towards me. I go, I really appreciate her here. And I don't know if off the top of my head, if I was making a list of all the things I do at work, like, if she would write that. So that's what I would do. Make it as long as possible. And if you don't want to write it yourself, go to ChatGPT or whatever your favorite AI is and ask it to write for your job. The other thing you can do is something like this. At HUD, where I think they're starting to lay off people willy-nilly, there's no rhyme or reason to this whatsoever. Efficiency is really about looking at an agency or a company or an enterprise and saying, what are the vital things and what are the things that are not so vital? And really assessing that and analyzing it and then saying, we don't need these non-vital things. Now, of course, that's not what dodgy Dodgy, whatever it is doing. They're just trying to destroy agencies, period, by wreaking as much havoc as possible and chaos.
Kind of like how private equity wasn't trying to make Toys R Us more efficient.
Yes. This is just extracting value out of it. And, a lot of this is just BS, too. Let's just be clear. They're taking out agencies that they want, to avoid these agencies inhibiting profit for their ventures and other of their friends' ventures, essentially. Now, some resourceful person at HUD, apparently they have a video communication system in HUD where they have TVs there, and some resourceful person, and this type of person, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who is an out-of-the-box thinker, who is a communicator, who maybe has some technical skills, and who's going to break things and take names and disrupt things. This is the kind of worker. And I think, to that extent, kudos for Elon and Trump for, getting folks like this to really show their value. This must be, I'll tell you what I would do if I was writing HR at opm.gov to tell why I deserve a job, my job. This would be first on my list. Look at what someone has posted. Long live the real king. And it's, Donald Trump rubbing,
massaging and sucking Elon's toes in the Oval Office.
It's honestly, that's very well done. It's creative. It's thoughtful. There's a couple more. Here we go. We got a lot of videos of it.
Jeff Stein here. You can see how it's on both the TV in the foreground and the TV in the background.
I mean, it's just very well done. It's very well done. Now, I'll have to say, too, keep it up there, because I think one of the things that is I like about this is that it's understated. Yeah. A lot of people will be like, I'm so proud of myself for making this video. I want everybody to see it, but they put the chyron over it as a way of saying, like, I'm confident in my product. Like, I don't need to shove it in your face. This is the kind of
like
worker
a pair
I
of
would
Elon
want.
feet.
This is the kind of person needs a promotion. That's all I'm saying.
It seems like the meritocracy is working well.
Yep. Philly cheesesteak. In my email to OPM subject line, what I did last week, I was busy working on the new incel fragrance, Lone Scum. CPG, Sam, last week on my 35th birthday, I was accepted to law school. Can I get a shofar to celebrate? All right. Jack from Colorado. God, let Emma get a word in. Emma is not here today. I think I mentioned that several times. Oh, here's the video. Nice. It's on the top of the Washington Post.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. All right. That's pretty good. It's just 8 seconds long. So it's got to be the same thing we had.
I probably want to see it in 4K, though.
4K, it's definitely a much better in that one. That's really nice. It's nice work. As we talk about federal workers who have been summarily terminated, this is NBC 10 Philadelphia's Brian Sheehan is on with a guy named Robert McCabe, a former IRS employee. This clip's a little bit long, but not too bad. Check this out.
Tell me what happened today. So, I mean, I went in at my normal time. When I arrived there, you know, everybody was in a very downtrodden mood. And when I went to my computer, you know, everybody was having some technical issues. Like none of our computers were really loading up either the programs that we needed to operate or like Teams. My story is the Teams. You know, that's kind of how I figured out that we were getting fired today. Was when I went in, I logged into Teams, and I sent you the photo of what I saw when I went to log in. And that's when I left my cubicle and I went around to everybody else I work with. And I'm like, hey, what's your Teams look like? Some were having trouble. Some were able to log in. It was very, very chaotic. I mean, there was no organization to it at all. And basically we just sat around for the rest of the day. I mean, talk about government efficiency. We literally sat there and did nothing all day long, while we waited for our fate. So again, we got our email saying that we were fired after sitting around all day knowing we were fired. And then we turned in our equipment about an hour or so later, and then we were escorted out of the building.
What do you make of what happened to you and your colleagues today? We hear about 400 employees, including yourself, were laid off.
I mean, it's unfair. I mean, I was unemployed, so I was laid off. I was laid off before this job, and it took me 8 months to apply and go through all the background checks and everything I had to do to get this job. And then 4 months later, now I'm in the same boat I was in before. I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of numb right now. You know, I went out to lunch with one of my buddies after immediately it happened, and you know, what can you do at this point? Aside from reach out to the news organizations, reach out to our senators, reach out to our representatives. I mean, it was an illegal firing. My performance was good. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was even one of those government employees that went every day of the week. I had to report every Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. That was my tour duty, and that's what I served. And here I am.
Just to be clear, almost like 6,500, maybe 7,000 IRS agents were fired. Now, the reason why he was fired is because he's considered a probationary, and I don't know what probationary means in the terms of this. Like, it could be 6 months, the first 6 months on your job. Again, if you were promoted within an agency, you are also a probationary hire and you can get fired. The IRS, for every dollar spent at the IRS, $7 is returned. They will screw up IRS direct file. That's going to be a casualty, saving your average person a ton of money. They didn't have to file with TurboTax. They didn't have to file with HR Block. And it's going to screw up, without a doubt, people's tax returns. They're going to be more angry at the IRS. This is not about efficiency. If it was about efficiency, in terms of saving the U.S. dollars, you would add 6,000 IRS agents. And they would be dedicated to auditing people like Elon Musk. Billionaires, millionaires who are avoiding taxation.
Right. Because, I mean, like the filing services, the private filing services now are tax deductible. So we're essentially paying them to, like H&R Block, to do taxes for people.
When we could be doing this for free. Yep. Super easy. Super easy. Super easy. I think with the IRS direct file, I don't think you can do it if you have any 1099 income. It's all W-2. You can do it if it's 1099 interest, but not non-employee compensation. Because Mila and I were going to try and do it. But there it is. And the guy was unemployed for 8 months. It's not easy to find a job. Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm wrong. When I say it's not easy to find a job after you've been summarily fired, I guess I'm wrong. And who better to know than Sean Hannity, multi-millionaire. Here he is on his radio program trying to justify what's going on with people fired. Now, 30% of the workforce are vets. Personally, I don't think you as a federal worker should be treated any better or worse because you were a vet. But a lot of these people did go through absolute hell in certain situations. And certainly on the right, ostensibly, they care about the vets. Of course they don't. But here is Sean Hannity explaining to his audience why people got to suck it up. You know, I'm sure your landlord or your bank will allow for you to take a couple of weeks or months off of paying them because you're such a good guy. Remember now, these are people, a lot of these people just got promotions. So put yourself in the mindset of somebody who just got promoted. Oh, we've arrived. Honey, we can afford that we can afford those car payments now. We can afford to, we can afford to build that fence in the backyard or whatever it is. And because you were just promoted, you got fired. Or I'm in civil service. I know there's a cap on what I can make, but I know this is a secure job because I go in and I do my job well every day. I got a good review and government work. Again, I'm not going to become a millionaire, but I am doing good for people and I'm doing a good job, so my job's secure. Nope.
Eric is in Wisconsin. Hey, Eric, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for all you're doing. We sure appreciate it here in Wisconsin, and we tried to help out this election cycle. So,
well, you helped out big time. You did. Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, all of you helped. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wish we could have got Tammy Baldwin out of there, but it didn't work out too well. So, but
yeah, well, you came close. I mean, unfortunately, you don't win every game you play.
Yeah, right. But hey, I just awesome stuff that Doge is doing with Elon Musk, and we sure appreciate it out here is what kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about.
I'll tell you something.
Moron.
God. We'll get to this in a second. USAID, what the annual budget is. But farmers get a big piece of that, significant piece of it. The taxpayers and farmers in Wisconsin, they're not going to see a single dime of savings, but they're going to see a lot more in terms of costs because the profit making by corporations who are now not going to have to worry about regulators is going to come at the expense of the consumers, of the citizenry. Continue.
Yeah, that out here is what kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about, Sean, a little bit, and I'm concerned the liberal media might run with this, is one of our tenants just recently got laid off from the USDA, and he's a disabled vet, multiple deployments overseas, and yeah, the guy is without a job now, and I'm just afraid that stuff like this is going to get out there. And I know you got a soft spot for military and police.
Pause it for 1 second.
EMS
I love the fact that it's his tenant. I'm worried he's not going to be able to pay me for rent. I'm a little concerned that this guy, I'm not going to pay him for rent. I wonder if Sean's going to say, well, I know you're going to do your part and not charge him rent for however long it takes him to find a job.
Right. That's the thing about this so-called waste is like so many of these things are providing good jobs, and
government doesn't provide jobs. Government doesn't provide jobs.
Well,
government doesn't create jobs. Isn't that what we were told?
I think that might be, we might want to look back.
Do we have to go all the way back like 8 years, 10 years for that? Go ahead.
All those guys, and just a little concerning that we don't let these guys, fall off the wagon here and get neglected because they've done so much for our country.
Look, I don't like to see anybody in a position where they're going to lose their job. In the case of USAID, and obviously your friend, I'm sure, is not a part of this, but there was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American.
First off, he doesn't address the USDA, which is what the worker was working at. So they just use USAID because it's the low-hanging fruit where everybody thinks that there are tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars of fraud and waste because it all is going out the door to foreign governments. The USAID budget is $40 billion annually. Of that, a minimum of $2.5 billion goes directly to U.S. farmers. Now, I don't know how much it costs to ship that food, but those are also American companies that are shipping that food. And those farmers have to be paid to grow that because otherwise they wouldn't be able to survive. This is not about the USDA loans that we've heard, farmers getting screwed over because of it. It's not about SNAP cuts that are coming in the Republican budget. When they complain about USAID, it's like, why would we spend $10 million on Sesame Street in Iraq? Haven't we done enough to those people there? Didn't we blow up their whole civil society? Why would we spend $1 to replace it? Why would we spend any money in Afghanistan? Who cares if Ebola is spreading like wildfire in certain parts of Africa? I mean, what could possibly hurt us here in the wake of a pandemic? Why do we care about providing support? We could just ultimately bomb them. Why would we even provide any aid? And then these people in the same breath will be like, but China's our number one competitor and we must defeat them. What do you think China's doing? But all right, so he focuses on something that has nothing to do with this person, this vet, getting fired from USDA.
People and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that
Wait, go back. He didn't work for them. He worked for USDA, but he's going to hear USAID every time because that's just a better story. Go ahead.
Was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American people and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that said, there are going to be a lot of job openings. A lot of people, for example, retired and took the early retirement and payout. And then there's
Pause it for a second. They shifted the buyout to early retirement because there is an early retirement program that you can take and that people by and by take with some regularity in the federal government. And now they said, you can't get your early retirement unless you sign the buyout thing to make it look like people are taking the buyout. Not that many people have. There's usually 150,000 people who turn over in the government annually. And so far, the number that I've seen floated is 60,000, but that includes the normal attrition because you can't do the early retirement thing. Now, I'm sure people are getting nervous. but they're lying. They're having to lie about this. And if you're looking for encouragement and hope, the idea that they're having to lie about this is a good sign. Go ahead.
And took the early retirement and payout. And then there's going to be jobs hopefully created in the energy sector when we blow that out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities.
Pause it for a second. What does it mean to blow out the energy sector? We already know that we have been drilling and producing more oil than at any other time in the history of the country. What is the energy? More people going to work at gas stations? What exactly is going to happen? If you blow out the energy sector, was it more people are going to work on oil rigs? Is that what he's talking about? This disabled vet is going to go work on an oil rig? Is that what he's talking about? I mean, what happens when the energy sector, this is going to be offset, incidentally, by all the cuts to like solar and wind power and people who've been working in those industries. I mean, you understand that we're weeks away from looking at a number. Every federal worker you cut, every federal dollar you cut, every federal grant you cut causes in the private sector this many people to lose their jobs and this many people to lose money. If they're successful at what they want to do, aside from leaving Americans less safe, they are going to also leave them poorer. And then hopefully, if they're lucky, they'll be able to say, oh, but we're going to give you a tax cut. And of course, most of that money is going to rich people. Go ahead.
That out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities. We all have to think of the what if you lose your job. Everybody has to have that in the back of their head. My entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day.
Pause it for a second.
And
now, if Hannity had been fired 15, 20 years ago, he could live off his millions and millions of dollars he already made.
So efficient.
And here's a taste of Republican leadership. Always have anxiety about your job. Always. That's the way we should live. Anxiety. Are we going to be able to pay for our kids? That's why healthcare, bad idea. Cuts down on worker anxiety. This is him being sympathetic now. Remember, we don't want the liberal media to make something out of this vet. Go ahead.
In the back of their head. My entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day. And with the, but smart, innovative, hardworking people will always be in demand. Always. And it sounds like I'm describing your friend. And I would just urge that person, do not get discouraged. And I don't know if he's getting the buyout.
Sean, why don't you hire him?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's smart and innovative in this and that. Like, multiple tours, disabled vet. I mean, this is a guy who wants to get out there and be an entrepreneur, I bet.
He just accidentally got hired by the government.
Yeah.
Or not getting the buyout, I'm not sure. If he is, that would mean he has until October 1. He will get paid until then. That gives him time, and that gives him time, to find a job that he's going to, thrive in and be successful at and be happy and secure again. And however, to continue to spend tens of billions of dollars on wokeism, transgenderism, DEI, and the Green New Deal abroad as the country veers off into bankruptcy is not an alternative. It's not an option for us. And you can't do this to the American taxpayer either. And he's just caught up in that, unfortunately for him. There are good people that are going to be, hurt because the people that have done this to the country have put them in vulnerable positions. It's really not Donald Trump that put them in the vulnerable position. It's the people that wasted all this money that that put them in the vulnerable position in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough to see, and especially for veterans that have done so much. We got.
You know what? But there will be other opportunities that are now going to emerge in a new economy, and make sure that he makes available to him that I would have go and get that government payout till October 1. That buys him time. And you know what I say to people that are out of work all the time?
I mean, obviously, like, he's just desperately hoping that this guy took the buyout. And of course, there is no budget line item for the budget for the buyout. That, incidentally, that's a fictional buyout at this point. There is no money available for a buyout. It doesn't exist. It's in no budget. But they have to lie. They have to lie because they realize how bad this sounds. The guy calls in, I'm afraid the liberal media is going to talk about this. I'm afraid this liberal media is going to talk about this real person who's going through this real thing.
How we're purging veterans from the civil service.
And, he's my tenant, which means that I could be out some money.
Right.
So this is really serious.
That's so perfect that he's a landlord.
Yep.
I do like how Hannity both accidentally reframed him, the USDA employee, as a USAID worker, and also reframed this guy as this guy's friend, not his tenant.
Yep.
But hey, a new economy coming, folks.
Hey, the new energy blowout, whatever that means. New economy.
Folks, if we have time, call into Hannity and tell us about your call if you make it on.
Yeah, exactly. Here is Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends this morning. And they're all like running cover now for this because there are people at town halls going like, hey, man, what's going on here? Now, let's be clear. The people who are showing up, they voted for Trump. That IRS agent, he voted for Trump. That doesn't mean that they were necessarily MAGA. He said that, well, I thought this guy was a business guy and I thought he would come in and do things efficiently. This sort of mythology around Donald Trump. He's a business guy. He's going to do things efficiently. I didn't think he would just willy-nilly cut things. Well, here's the thing is that, like, we are uneducated as a country as to what it means to be a billionaire. It means, A, they don't pay taxes. Everything they do is structured to avoid paying taxes. His Trump Foundation is structured to avoid paying taxes. They don't care about the IRS. Inefficiency? Trump just ordered $200 million, I think it was, to DHS to make videos thanking him for stopping immigrants from coming into the country. That doesn't seem to be terribly efficient. But now when they see the implications of what happens when you cut willy-nilly, and we haven't even seen the implications of it. We're just seeing the first round of like the direct implications on workers. We haven't even seen the knock-on effects. And hopefully, Democratic politicians and others will draw the connection between you fire someone at the USDA and SNAP benefits are late. You fire somebody at the USDA and, hey, wait a second. Why are we having problems with our food supply? You fire someone at the USDA and maybe like, how did this bird flu get so out of hand? But in the meantime, what they're doing is they're just bailing water and they're having to lie. And like I say, that's a good sign. They've run out of actual, like, there's no ideology here. MAGA just loves Donald Trump. There are people who voted for Donald Trump because they thought they were getting something slightly different, an efficient businessman. or getting rid of all the wokeism. And people wake up and they're like, is the wokeism gone yet? It is? How come it's raining? Like, isn't this supposed to affect the weather?
And almost every agency wants them to come in. So go ahead and got Treasury. Because you know what helps? Because cabinet secretary's got certain responsibilities, and the president's got to get elected, and people. But when you have someone from the outside come in and make some tough cuts, you could say, I don't have my hands in that. The blowback they're getting in some of these town halls is real. I'm sure there's some people in there that voted for Trump and said, I walked into work and I lost my job. But that's going to be one of the casualties of having to take a $2.7 million federal workforce and knock it down to maybe half of that. So I think we got a heads up on it. As I think the president would do himself a favor, and the Treasury Secretary especially, just saying, hey, we have a $7 trillion budget. We only make $5.9 trillion. The revenue gap is $2 trillion. This is part of closing that gap, is lessening the responsibility. It's not punitive.
Okay, first off, he starts off by saying, well, at least we can bring in Musk and pretend like it's his fault. We can bring in a consultant. And this, again, also, Democrats should be out there, get rid of the word MAGA. There's no MAGA Republicans. There's Republicans. Donald Trump is a Republican president. Musk is working for a Republican administration. This is what Republicans do. This is 15 years ago. I sat on a stage. I got invited to that Aspen Idea Festival or something once in my life with Janine. And it was some game show or talk show that we were supposed to do. This sort of supposed to be somewhat fun. And so they had us interview Grover Norquist, and it was supposed to be fun. And Grover Norquist was the head of an organization. I don't even know if it exists anymore. Taxpayers for America, fairness, bullshit, whatever it was. And they were the prototype Tea Party. It was Americans for Tax Reform, and they ran Toomey, I think it was, in Philadelphia, who we now think of as like, oh, he's an old style Republican. No, he was a lunatic. And I remember interviewing, and maybe this was in like 2010, because I feel like I talked about it on this show. We're talking to Grover Norquist, and we're trying to keep it light because it's supposed to be fun. And he immediately launches in about federal workers and all the benefits they get and how unfair that is for other workers. And I was like, well, maybe we should give those to other workers. And their project to demonize federal workers was in full swing 15 years ago. And probably before then. The idea, I mean, you go back to what was it, 2008, where, they're talking about maybe before this, cutting the Department of Education, getting rid of government agencies, getting rid of the IRS, cutting federal workers. Clinton capitulated to it by setting up a committee, and it took, of course, they studied it for 8 months and ended up cutting, a small percentage of the workforce. But they studied it at least. But it was garbage then too. Our federal workforce, relative to our population, has been static for 40 years. If they're concerned about the deficit or the debt, then why are they going to promote a $4.5 trillion tax cut? Why would you cut revenue if you're concerned about this? Because they're not. They're not concerned about the deficit.
And all the people they represent,
they're not concerned about the debt.
Have so much money. It's so absurd.
They don't care about those things. They don't. They're going to try and vote on a bill tomorrow, I think, that's going to cut like $800 billion of Medicaid, among other things. And Trump gives away the game. Well, we're not going to touch Medicaid, except for all the illegal immigrants that are taking Medicaid and all the DEI and wokeness and transgender stuff. And that's going to be $800 billion. You're an idiot. Well, you also may just be ignorant. But it really is, there's two classes of people who believe Donald Trump when he says, three classes of people when he says, we're not going to touch Medicaid. One is somebody who just doesn't follow these things. Two is someone who hasn't gone back to the last time he was president in his attempts to cut things then. And three, one who's just being willfully ignorant or lying. Maybe that's four. They don't care about the deficit or the debt. Because for every one of these agencies that gets cut, dollar for dollar, it probably puts, it is a transfer of wealth from U.S. citizens into the pockets of shareholders of corporations. They don't care about USAID. They care about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They don't care about the IRS. The rest of them, they actually just genuinely care about. But that's why you bring up any agency, they're going to talk about USAID. They're just getting rid of the wokeness. Here is a C-SPAN caller from West Virginia calling in on Friday. Like I say, when you cut government agencies, what you are doing is you are redistributing money from the citizenry and society at large into corporate coffers because you're cutting regulations, you're cutting things and regulators who are specifically there to curb corporate profits, to curb corporations from offloading their costs onto American citizens, consumers, taxpayers, and privatizing those profits.
Yes, ma'am. I'm calling from West Virginia, and which was a red state for Donald Trump. And they have a place called down here Public Debt. And a lot of my neighbors were voting for Trump. They walking around scared, crying, nervous, and they were forever Trumpers. But on a personal note, I'm a diabetic and I'm on Medicare. And when Joe Biden was in there, my insulin was $6 for a 28-day supply. I just went to CVS to get my new supply. It went back up to $80, they said, because the American Recovery Act was canceled. So it went from $6 to $80. So I don't know if anybody else out there on Medicare. And
the subsidies are gone. Subsidies are gone. They're rescinding all sorts of stuff.
It's not efficient to have people get insulin for cheap.
I don't know if, I'm surprised that guy feels feeling that so quickly, but that's happening. And we're going to see that across the board. I mean, people are going to get kicked off of the ACA. They're going to roll back subsidies there. We're going to see a lot going on.
The only challenge is emphasizing it all, like all the young women who have to go across state lines for abortion care.
It's going to be hard to choose what thing. There's going to be so much that is going to impact people on a material basis that they don't realize is not a function of government incompetence, but a policy decision made by the Trump administration. but doesn't make a difference when people come out and speak. Here is, let's do a couple of clips of these. California representative, and this is why tomorrow should be fun to watch and see if they even bring a bill to the floor. Because California, New York Republicans are going to be nervous. The more you get this information out there about what they want to do, the cuts that they want to implement, the better. Here is Jay Obernolte, Republican, California, 23rd District. Town Hall in Yucca Valley.
How do you feel about a unelected, non-confirmed... as one of the checks and balances of our nation?
Great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Okay? And I am very glad someone is looking at all of the waste.
There you go. Here is Representative Stephanie Bice, Republican in Oklahoma's 5th. This is a telephone town hall. Again, asked about Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk is working for a Republican administration. Elon Musk is a Republican, the biggest Republican donor. And Republican lawmakers are not doing anything about it. They are all involved in this. This is a Republican project. Here's an excerpt from that call.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that Doge, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically, the VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans' benefits, that's very alarming to me.
Of course. I'm surprised. I mean, I got to give her credit, though. Somehow she got through that answer without saying transgender or DEI. So, I mean, credit where credit's due. She didn't hit the trifecta. She only did the illegal immigrant thing. That, of course, the VA is paying for all these illegal immigrants. Incidentally, we have a lot of undocumented immigrants who have served in the U.S. military. We may even had undocumented immigrants who are transgender served in the U.S. military, who may have subscribed to wokeism. Here is Wisconsin Representative Scott Fitzgerald. After praising Elon's efforts for the fake, it is fake. You know it's fake, right? You know there's no waste in, you don't assess. Where do you work where you have thousands of employees where you would be okay with a consultant walking in and in a day, boom, 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 you're fired? Well, like, where do you work where you would think like, oh, okay.
What kind of person accepts that?
No one. There's not a single person who listens to my voice, who works in any type of enterprise where, the McKinsey consultant comes in and within 36 hours is already firing half the workforce. Anybody who got a promotion, this is where we're going to start. Did you get anybody here who's been recently promoted? Raise your hands. Okay, you're all fired. That's where we're starting. Goodbye.
And it was interns from McKinsey too, not even like the head guy.
Nope. This guy's just whiz kid out of high school. You cannot believe the algorithms he can create.
He's the most racist guy at McKinsey.
Here's the algorithm. Have you been hired recently? Maybe because you're headed into a new area and you need people with a different expertise. And have you been promoted recently? You're all fired. That's the algorithm. Then we get on to the next level of cuts. Who in their right mind would say that's efficient? You're being snowed. Play this.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Absolutely no proof.
Yep, absolutely no proof. Hey, you know what happens when there's fraud? People should go to jail.
Yep.
Or like the great senator from Florida, Rick Scott, who pled the fifth. I think it was like 53 times when he was talking about
on the case.
His company's Medicaid fraud. Where are the cases?
That's the thing is like, go to these things like, what's the point of you, by the way? Sitting on your ass watching a billionaire do all this supposedly efficient stuff. Like, why should we even vote for representatives anymore?
That's Representative Scott Fitzgerald in Wisconsin, right? This is, do we do Glenn Grantham? Here's Glenn Grantham. He is also a Republican from Wisconsin. Go ahead.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think he's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Pause it. Just in case you were wondering, he has not gotten rid of birthright citizenship. It's in the Constitution, incidentally.
It'd require you guys to do some work, actually. Not that we want to see that work done, obviously.
He wrote a letter saying, I'd like to do this. Hey, guys, also, did I tell you that I did cold fusion? It's right here. I wrote the letter. I did cold fusion. I'm going to be a millionaire. Go ahead.
He's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Illegal as hell.
So there it is. I mean, it's helpful. People across the country, organizations, are organizing people to go to these meetings. I think some of it is via organization. I think some of it is just like people are showing up going like, what the F?
Yep.
But it's important. It's effective because, and I wish we saw the Democratic leadership do more of this. They're just waiting. Yep. You heard like James Carvell on some show the other day was like, you're going to see his numbers drop. Democrats just sit back and wait and do nothing. They should be taking a metal chain, shackling it around Donald Trump's leg, and then tying it to every single Republican lawmaker in the country. Yep. No one, not Not a single Republican lawmaker, cabinet person should be in any way anything but directly tied to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They are all the same. The agenda has always been the same. The Republican Party has had this agenda. They have wanted to cut Social Security for 90 years. They wanted to cut Medicare from the day that it was done. They want to cut Medicaid. They want to block grant it. They wanted to attack and demonize federal workers. They want to get rid of unions. They want to get rid of all financial regulations. They want to roll back any type of regulations on food safety. This has been the Republican agenda forever. It's just the only difference now is that they've been able to repackage it after moral majority and after it was, Americans for Tax Reform, and then after it was the Tea Party, and now they finally settled on MAGA. And the Democrats took the damn bait the whole time. These extremist MAGA blank, 14 different qualifiers. And then all of a sudden they look like, these are real rebels. They're not like Republicans. They are Republicans. This is what Republicans do. This is what conservatives do. Conservatives have had this agenda for decades. Decades. 10 years ago, this week, Steve Bannon was at CPAC saying, our job is to destroy the administrative state. This is what they do. This is what Republicans do. Meanwhile, I don't know much about the military, other than we spend ungodly amounts on it for unclear reasons. I do know that if I was going to look for fraud and waste and abuse, I would probably start with our defense budget, which is larger than, which is twice the size of the rest of the world's defense budgets combined. I don't think that's Pete Hegseth's agenda when firing all the generals. I think that is, he's doing a woke purge. And let's be clear, what he's doing is they are making sure that anybody they hire in these positions are not going to talk back to Trump. Because last time they had a problem with the independence of the military, or at least the idea that the military had taken a pledge, a vow to support the Constitution as opposed to Trump. In addition to firing the top generals, they fired the top military lawyers of the Marines, the Army, and the Navy, I think it was, or the Air Force. 3 of the 4 branches of the service. Maybe it was the Air Force, Navy, and Army. And I know that people are like, why would they fire the lawyers? These are the people who advise the military, like, what does the Constitution say about this? What you should be, what is your legal obligation to follow what may be an illegal order? And Pete Hegseth says, well, that's not why we fired them. And then restates that exact reason.
Branches. For people who may not know, I mean, they give advice to the military about what is lawful and what isn't. Not surprisingly, there's been some backlash to those who are worried about their removal. One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about.
Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. Let's just go back. You get Rosa back up on the screen there. This is her hyperbole. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. I don't know who she is or what that hyperbole is about. Let me restate what she says in my non-hyperbole way.
break the law, you get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these people.
Wait.
In their spots?
In their spots? They don't want to be roadblock. Wait. So she said hyperbole is when you say, when you're about to break the law and they tell you to slow down. And he says, we don't want them to be obstacles.
In their spots. Is their spots constitutionality?
Let's go back just a little bit. In their spots, in the legal spot.
I think he realizes that.
He realizes, like, wait a second. That was the reason why we fired them. I'm not supposed to say that. She nailed it.
Who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these TJAGs inside the military, traditionally they've been elected by each other or chosen by each other, which is exactly how it works often with the chairman as well. Small group of insulated officers who perpetuate the status quo. Well, guess what? Status quo hasn't worked very well at the Pentagon. It's time for fresh blood. So we're going to open
branches.
So we're going to get rid of the people who are in charge of telling us whether we broke the law. You know, another way for status quo is also like the legal system or the Constitution. That's been status quo. Yeah. Now, listen, I think we all agree that as Secretary of Defense, you have the authority to fire generals based upon their skill sets and their aptitude and whatnot. And put up this post from Atrios. Let's just see the New York Times. I just zoom in on the New York Times part of it. Okay. So just make sure we cut that out. Yep. And this is how the New York Times reported the firing of General Brown, the Joint Chiefs of Staff head. Mr. Hegseth has previously said General Brown should be fired because of his woke focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. First of all, you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mr. Hegseth said at an appearance on the Sean Ryan show in November. Sean Ryan's not one of those war criminals, is he? No. No, he's a different guy. In November, he added that any general involved with DEI efforts should be fired. Either you're for war fighting, and that's it. He said, that's the only litmus test we care about. You know, as the New York Times writes that, in response to Hegseth's firing of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, it sounds not with something that I would agree with. I find it hard to believe that this woke stuff is really taking over that much. Yeah. But I understand that's their, you know, it's unreasonable, but it's reasonable, if you know what I mean. Let's scroll down and see how the AP wrote up this. Again, hat tip to Duncan Black over at Eschaton, or Atrios, I should say. Atrios over at Eschaton. Here's how the AP talks about this. Interesting that none of this stuff made it into the New York Times article.
The New York Times headline or slogan is "All the news that's fit to print." So this is what isn't fit.
What isn't fit to print is Hegseth had previously taken aim at Brown. Oh, okay. This is from the podcast, the same podcast. First of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He said flatly in a podcast in November. Oh, that must be the Sean Ryan show that the Times alerted us to. Okay. And in one of his books, this must be, they're talking about, what do you call it? Pete Hegseth's book. Well, I mean.
Blurbed by Tulsi, I think.
Yeah. I mean, but how would you'd have to read it. In one of his books, he questioned whether Brown got the job because he was black. Huh. Was it because of his skin color or his skill? We'll never know, but always doubt, which on its face seems unfair to CQ. But since he has made the race card one of his biggest calling cards, it doesn't really much matter, Hegseth wrote. It is a weird context to give. To take what he says about the Joint Chiefs of Staff in his book and compare it to what he said in November on a podcast, and to see how those two things meld together, I don't know. That gives just like way too much context. Like, is it right to present what someone wrote about somebody that he acted upon in that way? Like the AP did? They're rogue, man. They're totally rogue. Oh, I get it. Because they're still so woke that they're calling it the Gulf of Mexico.
Exactly.
I mean, the New York, like, what is the justification? The New York Times is supposed to give you the context of this guy being fired. And the presumption is, you hear Hegseth's, status quo is over. The Pentagon has done things wrong. I'm firing him. It's my prerogative. That's what he says on the news program the day after he fires them. Also, he has a little bit of trouble when he's got to be talking about, we've got the lawyers gotten rid of too. And then you go back all the way to November to quote him on a podcast where he's talking about why he doesn't want. Well, if that makes sense, if it makes sense to provide that context, why would you leave out the context of Hegseth's book, where he basically says the dude only got to be hired as a Joint Chiefs of Staff because he's a black guy?
And presumably wonders that about any black person in the military.
There's no way to know. The only way to make sure that a black guy is not hired because he's black is to not hire him for those jobs.
Get the white guys with
just
crusade
get the
tattoos.
normal people in. The people who don't have a race. The people who are just normal. They're not, they're not this one thing or the other thing. They're just normal and deserving and meritorious. And not going to be obstacles.
In their spots.
In their spots.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with the military, is there was too many obstacles in terms of legality that they were being caught up by.
All right. We don't have much time, but I want to play this clip because I want to give credit where credit's due. We'll have time to do more of this stuff tomorrow, but so Trump is at a National Governors Association meeting, and he's bragging about all the work he's done, gotten rid of all the trans people, the 12 trans women who were playing sports throughout the nation in high school level. And Governor Janet Mills is there. First of all, like, Susan Collins, this has to be the time where she goes. Like, this whole idea, I mean, you got to get somebody in there who's actually going to be aggressive and point out how much of a liar Susan Collins is. Whenever you know Susan Collins is going to vote against a nominee, it means they have enough votes to pass a nominee. That's the tell. When Susan Collins comes out and says, I'm voting against something, that is your first indication the Republicans have enough votes to pass it. Always. Here's Trump at this National Governors Association, and good for Janet Mills. She's not going to take his crap. And he gets pissed. He doesn't like anybody talking back to him, and particularly one of the non-male persuasion.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal law.
Pause it for a second.
well,
now, Trump is talking about complying with their new edict on Title IX and banning trans girls from participating in girl sports.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state, the NCAA.
It's going to be interesting to see.
That's going to do good wonders for sports for young girls. Is just cutting off all federal funding.
Well, it's to save the girls.
Yeah,
it's to save the girls for the how many trans women have played in Maine college sports over the years. Hours after that, barely, the Trump administration, pop this up, launches a civil rights investigation into Maine's transgender student sports participation policy. I don't know who's left there to do any type of investigation. They've already shut down. But apparently they want to show the value of the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights. They launched an investigation into the Maine Department of Education for potentially violating Title IX, the federal education law that bars sex-based discrimination. The Office for Civil Rights, it's such a joke to call it that now. Allegations that it continues, this being Maine, to allow male athletes to compete in girls' interscholastic athletics, and it has denied female athletes female-only intimate facilities, thereby violating federal anti-discrimination law. Launching a civil rights investigation is a key step in the process of yanking a school's federal funding. But the bar for being guilty of a civil rights violation is high. And federal government has not used this lever of power in Washington in decades. It'll be interesting.
And it says there, too, letters sent to Maine Education Commissioner notified her that the Office of Civil Rights is launching a probe into 2 schools for allowing a transgender student to compete in girls' sports categories. A. So if I'm understanding correctly, one student.
Yeah.
Literally one student.
That's all it ever is. So it's like a couple.
There it is.
Check their genitals.
I wonder if Susan Collins is going to, what she's going to do.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's read some IMs and we got to get out of here. Dylan, would like to call in to cancel my membership. I don't deserve to be hung up and ridiculed when I'm trying to share my passion for alternative economic system of value flows with your leftist program. Yet you say you don't see capitalism ending in your lifetime, which is out of blind ignorance. And just like MAGA, I don't want to hold ignorance against you, but really liberal of you and not leftist to dismiss a supporting member.
Was this about the app that somebody was
the debate
pitching?
about libertarian anarchism?
Oh yeah, no, they probably were ridiculing you.
I don't. Was I here?
I have no idea what this is referring to.
Listen, as a libertarian and an anarchist, people should know that canceling is self-initiated.
Yeah, I mean, that is rough.
But honestly, The other thing that members should know is that there's really nothing that you can say that gets me angry. Over the course of like 20, 25 minutes, I start getting frustrated because I'm wasting time on the show. The only thing that can get me really angry is when you leverage what we say, your membership, you leverage that and demand something of the show because you're a member. I have too many psychological issues with that. I've gotten fired by too many places because of people thought they were the boss because they were paying me money. I don't react well to that. That is the way that you get fired as a member. So you will not be quitting your membership. I will fire you summarily. So send an email, and you have two choices. Send me an email with your email address, and I will fire you. Or I want a letter, 5 bullet points, as to what you did last week to justify your membership. It's one of those two things that has to happen. Kowalski from Nebraska. Welcome back, Sam. I have compiled the majority assessment as requested. Emma and Bradley do not use a single curse word. Truly incredible. However, swearing was still an average level given the absolute tenacity of Matt Leck, Aaron Brown, and Brandon Sutton. You might get sponsored by the U.S. Navy at these rates. I would highly recommend not using ChatGPT while on ketamine. You might be making some very weird requests at 2 a.m. I would imagine.
Can ChatGPT raise your kids for you? Because I know somebody who might need it.
I would imagine the governor of Maine felt a lot like Chamberlain, who led the 20th Maine Regiment in bayonet charge against the slaver army during the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Spiritually, the governor of Maine just shouted out, "Fix bayonets." Vermont Ben, the United States voted with Russia and Belarus against the resolution condemning the invasion of Ukraine today on its 3rd anniversary. What are MR's thoughts? That's problematic. I'm not surprised Russia and Belarus voted that way. And I guess to a certain extent, I'm not surprised that the United States did. Can we please hold Russia to the same imperialist, warmongering, belligerent standard that we correctly hold Israel to? Yeah, we can. It feels like Trump is holding them now to the same standard.
The issue is, like, if you call for a 2-state solution, that kind of is, because that is accepting, say, territory taken by conquest for an end of peace.
The situations are obviously different, but I think, Trump is being consistent in that he now has taken his total disregard for the Palestinians and has imposed that on the Ukrainians as well.
Absolutely.
And to be fair, also, from Ukrainians, they can give me minerals. And Gaza, you can give me land.
And
so
every European country raise your military spending.
Donut Man, Ohio is on its way to the network state. Gerrymandering, Jobs Ohio. Please look into Andrew Arsenal's one drone factory going here with huge subsidies. Dave from Jamaica. I am no military fan, but is their plan to fill military leadership with racist dipshits? Mob meeting. IMR's majority report is not pro-Russia.
Also, that filling up the military with right-wingers, that goes back even. I mean, during the Iraq War, there was issues.
Oh, my God. Particularly the Air Force.
Yeah.
There was that general, I can't remember his name now, who gave speeches like, our God is better than their God. Ryan from Rochester, is there even enough HR people to process these emails, or is the federal government using AI as HR?
They're going to use AI.
The HR email will have a non-government email address blocked by their firewalls, FYI, so nothing will be sent. Maybe. Trumpflation stickers. You may be right. $10 more. Jab from Virginia. I'm a security job at Job Corps. Maybe I'll send an email. You should. Joe Snuffy. Calling in today to talk about how it appears the right plans to loot the DOD. Tomorrow. We'll take calls tomorrow. Jack from Colorado. God, let Emma get a word in edgewise. Yeah, I already saw that. Solidarity from nowhere. This is out of nowhere, but in a parallel universe where Sam gets the role of Saul Goodman and makes the show a tiny bit worse. Sorry, but not even God in heaven would find a better actor for that role. I know you two are friends, and I hope you're humble enough to agree with this as much as you like to play that role. What?
Did you go out for Better Call Saul?
No.
Oh.
No. No, I thought Odenkirk was great in that role. He's a good actor. Baltimore Live Show. My brother works for the NLRB, and he and his coworkers were thinking of responding to the email with I already read that. The grocery list. All right, so 8 more. Nick from Iowa. I've been speaking to my mother about news and whatnot. She says that she wants better news sources. I tried to introduce her to the Majority Report by having her listen to last week's renters strike episode because I was so impressed by it. Her response was the show turned off because your purpose is to rile people up. Very disappointing. Any advice in introducing somebody to bigger ideas?
Does she read? Because I think like the American Prospect or the Lever might be good just to substitute for people for someplace to check out the news.
The American Prospect is pretty dry. Yeah. Trillaflop. Sam, I'm on my lunch break, and that Trump AI video made me lose my appetite. Thank you.
We did play that right during lunch.
Muddy Mo, thanks for your coverage. I did my taxes early because I knew the IRS would get fired. Frustrating and angering news about the firings. Company Townie. It's odd to me that vaccines and food safety are on the chopping block, but they're clearly trying to remove any security from middle and lower class people. Do they not know that the Black Plague caused the end of feudalism? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Jobby Boonier. James Carvell is a plant. He's a fake Democratic operative who's married to a Republican strategist. His sole true mission, just like Rahm Emanuel, has been pulling Democrats to the right.
Also, check out his house. It's wild.
What is it?
It looks like it's hard to describe. It's very gaudy and colorful. It looks like kind of Bam Margera's house, but instead of in West Virginia, it'd be in New Orleans.
9 to 5. Have you seen the statements from the new EEOC director on her priorities? My priorities will include rooting out unlawful DEI-motivated race and sex discrimination, protecting American workers from anti-American national origin discrimination, defending the biological and binary reality of sex and related rights, including women's rights to single-sex spaces at work, protecting workers from religious bias and harassment, including anti-Semitism, and remedying other areas of recent under-enforcement. Ay. All right, 3 more. Mayor Jess, did you see Jamie on the Luigi doc on HBO? Pretty neat. No, that's awesome.
It is crazy. I think the Luigi's defense attorney made this point, like Eric Adams and folks getting dressed up in makeup to appear in a documentary for somebody who hasn't been tried yet is just so crazy.
Jay Tingle, Hannity's on-air patter is really lifeless. Emma referred to Bradley and Matt as these effers at the end of one broadcast. Thank you for reporting her. Brian from Washington State, USDA sent guidance to the response to OPM is voluntary and no penalty for non-response.
Good.
Somebody's like backtracking on their what do you call it? Ketamine fueled tweets.
It's interesting if it's just like the FBI that can get away with that sort of thing or not.
Doge doo-doo. Sam, USPS, like other federal agencies, add points for vets when you apply and test for jobs. There are lots of vets working for the Postal Service. And the final IM of the day. We don't have a guest on tomorrow, right? All right, we'll have plenty of time for... Chevron. As a Maine resident, I would happily vote for Janet for Senate. She'll do a better job than Susan ever tried to do, though she did make a public statement against our Pine Tree Power Initiative which was personally a disappointment. That is a drag. All right, folks. Matt, Bradley, great job today. Emma in absentia. We'll see you tomorrow. Great job filling in, doing solo work last week. And we will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive